for a safe space where healing might take place, where everyone is valued. Given tools to maintain where equity matters. Less talk, more action, where anyone is welcome. Don't send them home packing, this is strong talk. When conversation pops off, speak life, reflect hope, promote choice and love folk. Strong talk, real talk, no jokes. Recovery, culture, community. Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to Strong Talk, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of equity, diversity, and family as it pertains to mental health and addictions. This is a space committed not only to discussing challenges within our system, but to explore and create space for solutions. I'm your host, Vic Armstrong. Thank you for joining me today as we continue our journey, and as I am joined today by my friend, Tonja Myles. Tonja is a peer counselor, a community activist, and subject matter expert at Set Free Addiction Recovery Services, LLC. Tonja, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Vic.
Absolutely. You are such a busy lady, so I'm glad we were able to get you on today because you have so much going on with your work with your ministry, with the work you do in the behavioral health space, and just the work you do across the country. So I really appreciate having you on today. I would love if you just take just a minute or two just to tell us your story, because I think that's such an important piece of the backdrop to all the other work that you do. If you don't mind, I know you get asked about this all the time, but could you tell us just a little bit about your story? What brings you to this space?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in this space. I mean, you're so legit, and I'm just grateful that you asked me to be a guest, which who's going to say no to you? So, okay with that. But yeah, again, thank you for that introduction. And unfortunately, my story is one of hope and encouragement. And I guess I say unfortunately, because people always ask me, Tonja, how's business or how's things going? And I'm like, unfortunately, it's going good. But I'm grateful that, I am still alive to share my story of hope and courage and a whole lot of other stuff. I'm from Louisiana. I am my daddy's daughter, and I'll talk more about that later. When I was 7, I was molested, and that spawned a series of events of mental health challenges, behavior issues, substance abuse, a whole plethora of things. The first time I tried to kill myself, I was 13. I ended up in a hospital getting my stomach pumped. It was back in the day, I remember, lying in the hospital bed with those tubes going down my throat, down my nose to my throat to my stomach to pump all the pills that I had taken out. And I remember, family members saying, Tonja, when you get out, you just got to trust God. You got to go to church more, which I did. I got worse. And nothing, no shade on the church, not for right now anyway. But, back in the day, that's just something that you did not talk about in my family or, in the African American community. And look, my big challenge is that my parents who are not around, I feel sorry for them the most because they did not know what to do with their young daughter who had all these behavioral health issues and challenges. And so they did the best that they could. Unfortunately, I, started using drugs, and which was just recreational drugs. And before you know it, it was, from marijuana. And I said I would never do crack cocaine because I was so much better than that. And before it was all over, I was a straight up crackhead. I'm a 3-time suicide attempt survivor. I hate addiction. My mom was also an alcoholic. My dad was a functioning addict. So I know firsthand how it affects the person, individual. I have 37 years now from being in recovery. And to be honest, just got properly diagnosed about 7.5 years ago with having PTSD. And can I tell you, Vic, when the pain finally had a name, everything made sense. And so, I made a vow to God, if he would help me, I would help others. Because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think I'd never get out of that black hole. I didn't think I would live to have this many birthdays. So I'm very open and honest about sharing my story because I want people to know that there's hope. They don't have to suffer in silence. The struggle is real, but so is recovery.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I struggle to even know where to jump in because your story is so rich. But you did strike something that's a bit of a, it's one of those things that just always sparks interest in me with, just to have conversation and explore other people's thoughts on this, because When you said once the pain had a name, and I don't want to misquote you, but that it was that made it easier for you to cope with it, to deal with it. Um, and you also touched on some things about the intersectionality of mental health challenges, having mental health challenges, and being a person of color, and being a part of a community that may identify differently to suicide and addictions and things than maybe other communities do. And I guess the point I'm getting to is, um, you know, like you, faith was a big part of my upbringing. I was this, son of a pastor. So faith played a huge role. But at the same time, the faith-based community and the Black church in particular um, has done a lot of damage in the Black community as it pertains to mental health and as it pertains to suicide. And I guess the thing I want you to talk a little bit about is, in our community, oftentimes we will give a name to things, but we give it the wrong name, and then we treat it the wrong way. We label suicide as other people's problem and not a Black problem. And so much of that seems to permeate how we have these conversations in Black and brown communities.
Yeah, I mean, it still pains me when I hear, when someone who has a mental health issue in the faith-based community, and I'm gonna say back then we used to tell people you just got a spirit on you, that's the devil. I think that's one of the most degrading things we can say. And look, most people don't understand maybe what they're saying. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. But that still is in my head. That it's a spirit that is demonic. Wow. And we wonder why people don't come forth, or, come out, if you will, and talk about their struggle. I can tell you, scripture or emphasis in the Bible, where, folks had, bouts of depression, anxiety, and things of that nature. And so for us to call it a spirit and say it's demonic is one of the reasons why people don't come forth. And so I think conversations like this, and you being a PK kid, and in the space that you do, and talking about suicide, I think it makes it more palatable. Telling a person that, if you kill yourself, you're going to hell, those are some harsh words. And I'm gonna be honest, as you can tell, it still triggers me today. So I'm glad that, you are having these conversations, and we're really addressing hurt in the faith-based community. Because you're right, we're the worst, and because we tell people, we're gonna pray with you, which is great. But then how about we also have the power to refer? How about, we tell them about organizations and resources that can get them the help that they need? Because again, I always say this, if somebody came to our church or came to our, our faith-based communities and said, hey, look, I'm having an issue with my chest and my left, my left arm is hurting, I'm having some shortness of breath. Yeah, we'll say, let us pray, but we'll also say, let's call 911 or go see a doctor. It should be the same instance when it comes to, mental health challenges or mental wellness or mental health.
Yeah. I love the way you frame that, though. You have the power to refer, because we look at, making a referral as I've somehow failed because I can't fix it. And I run into a lot of faith leaders who feel like, well, they came to me, I need to fix this. And they fix it with the only thing they know to do, that is to pray. And, like you, I believe in the power of prayer, but you can't church away mental health challenges. And prayer doesn't negate the need to talk to a therapist or a clinician. You can have Jesus and have a therapist. And I think that's one of the things that people in our community struggle with. The other thing that that is always kind of a trigger for me is when I hear people say, and I know you've heard it, what happens in this house stays in this house. And it is well intentioned. I heard it growing up, and for me it was okay. But it was okay because the house was a safe space. What happens when the house is not a safe space? And it was safe for me in terms of I wasn't starving, I wasn't abused. It wasn't safe for me, though, in terms of being able to talk about what I was feeling emotionally, because as a young Black boy, I wasn't permitted to do that. And that's another conversation I often have with people in Black and brown communities is, when you say what happens in this house stays in this house, you are really teaching our young people in particular not to reach out for help. And that's troubling.
Yeah, it is troubling. And look, we know we can say why historically we were told that because of trauma, trust, and traditions, and I get all
Absolutely.
that. But at the end of the day, you're right. As I'm looking at my rug, it's almost like, we were told just sweep it under the rug. Well, at the end of the day, it's only so much sweeping I can do under that rug before I
Yeah.
start tripping and everybody in the house.
Yeah.
That's a whole preach right there, because trauma affects everyone. And
It
so
does.
we have to address it. I believe that healing has to start in the house first, to be honest. I think we got it a little backwards that,
Yeah.
we want, the power to refer is key. Yes, we need to have those resources ready, but we have to heal the house. And so, for so long, we were told not to feel. You're right. That's white people do that. We don't do that. We don't go telling people our business, so I think that now that we're having those conversations and letting people know it's okay to feel, baby, you're human.
Yeah.
You're resilient, in the world that we live in now. Yes, you have to, keep, how they used to tell us, you got to keep your cards
Yeah.
to your chest. Don't let people see what's going on. But it also has taught us to, just really stay within ourselves.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when I don't know how to help me, it should be okay for me to reach out and ask for help. And when
Right.
the faith community know who are the people in your neighborhood, the Bible says we're working together with God. So we all need each other. We need those organizations. We need resources like never before. Because look, as being a pastor, it's a hard road, when you are trying to help someone and you pray for them and then they need other resources and you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's when it's
Yeah.
it's a challenge. So the more resources we know, the more we know who are the people in the neighborhood, the more we can tell people, yep, you need to call 988 and 911. I think the better
Yeah.
off, it's going to be for our community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know in the work that you do, and the same with the work that I do, you encounter a lot of faith leaders. And
Sure.
one of the things I have learned is that for a lot of faith leaders, they haven't dealt with their own trauma. And
Mm.
because of that, they struggle with helping other people with their trauma. They may go so far with inviting resources into that church community, but then they will stop it because it hits a little too close to home. And so I still think we have a lot of work to do too in educating our faith leaders about acknowledging and naming their own trauma and being able to move past it.
Yeah, because pastors do amazing work, and clergy through whatever that looks like in your community, your faith community, do a lot of work. And they take on a lot of folks, challenges and trauma and
Mm.
problems. And so, I'm a military girl. I believe that we have to lead by example. I think that when leaders in the faith community, just say, hey, look, I'm human.
Yeah, yeah,
I love, I love my spirituality. But it's okay to have a script and a scripture, in the
yeah,
morning.
yeah,
That's okay. And I think that when more faith-based leaders really, talk from their own lived experience, and it could be from a family perspective as well, I think it will make those who they serve um, more more comfortable with talking
mhm,
about their issues and their challenges. Because at the end of
yeah.
the day, we all got them.
That's right. That's right. One of the things too that you are so good at, and I think that people know you for is being very candid, not in an offensive way, but in a way that says this work is not always pretty, but we have to acknowledge and call it what it is. And one of the ways that you've done that recently is you put together and released a video,
Mm.
and it is very candid. And we weren't able to play it on this podcast because a lot of people listen to the podcast, and without context, it is probably very difficult for people to follow the video. But I welcome you to share with people how they can access it. But I did want you to talk a little bit about the genesis of that video.
Well, you know what? At the end of the day, I realize is that, and I know people say that, we have to tell our own narrative, but we do. And to be honest, I know you said it was, candid. To me, it was almost Kool-Aid,
Mm.
because I really wanted to be really raw. And but to me, suicide is real. Outcomes like mine is a good one, but there are so many other outcomes that are not like mine. And I know that in the video, I wanted to do something that was raw, that was real, but also engaging and that was thought provoking. But then also, hopefully encourage people to have a conversation about suicide, or the lack thereof. Because I know at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. And so when I had this vision in my head, I knew that it had to be peers. It had to be people like me who had lived experience to be a part of the whole dynamics. And I think we came up with a good product. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. I'm excited about that, but I'm more excited that it's sparking people to have a conversation. Because I know some people, and we did tell people, hey, this is this disclaimer, you might be triggered. One of the instances did not end as I guess most people thought it would, but that's the reality of suicide and why we have to have the conversation and why we have to prevent it. And look, I'm always looking for ways to be creative and to be innovative. And I know music is one that, folks love, and that, visual. And, so look, and we see stuff all on TV all the time that's raw and real, and those are the things that Netflix or other streaming devices, those things people click onto. And so I wanted to make sure that it was something that was authentic, that was real, but then also at the end of the day gave somebody hope. And that's how we ended that video. And I'm super excited that we did it, and I'm super excited the outcomes have really, really, really been amazing.
Now, and can you tell people how to find it? What would they Google if they're looking for?
Yeah, all they have to do is go to No Judgment, No Stigma, and they can get it from there. You can go to No Judgment, No Stigma YouTube. You can go to the No Judgment, No Stigma.com, or you can go to No Judgment, No Stigma on IG, and you can look at it. And we want people to share it, and we want people to have conversations about suicide prevention and mental health, and also substance abuse.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for putting that out there. Um, so much of what you bring to the table, we look at your work, and I should say because I should speak for me and not speak for other people. But I look at the work that you do, and I look at your passion, and you make it look easy, because you stay very busy. Your work is consistent. Your message is consistent. But I can only imagine the challenges, not only of navigating a mental health system as someone seeking services, but also navigating a mental health system as someone who is an advocate, who's a peer, who's a voice, a leadership voice in this space, that there are additional challenges being a Black female, in doing all of those things. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are there unique challenges in navigating mental health services as being a Black female? And are there unique challenges in this advocacy space?
Oh, there are challenges, and and to be honest, because I work in this space, I thought I was safe. I'm not. For example, I've seen racism at its finest, and I've been on that receiving end. I've been on the receiving end of classism, racism, sexism. Unfortunately, I check a lot of boxes, being Black, being a female, being a veteran, being a person who had a mental health diagnosis and also in recovery. And again, I really thought that, I was pretty much safe until I got a service dog. And I decided to get a service dog because I started to do EMDR therapy, which was a game changer. For me, Vic, this as a mental health professional, trauma is no joke. It's a beat.
Right.
It's a beat. And it'll come back to bite you in the butt. And so when I got my service dog, Mitzi, again, I thought I was in a safe space, but I got judged on a whole different level because people would look at me and then people would ask, even though they're not supposed to, why you have a service dog? What's your diagnosis? What's your no? The one is what's your problem? What's your disability? Just stuff like that. And it brought on a whole new stigma, if you will, for me. And so I'm already Black, I'm already a female. People know that I have PTSD, and most time I think people even kind of come at me a little different because I guess they think I'm gonna set it off. But if I set it off, it ain't gonna be my PTSD. It's gonna be all me. Trust me on that one. And so those things are still I still have to address and deal with even today. And I'm not gonna lie and tell you it gets easier, because I might make it look good or I might not react to it at the time. But then, for me, it's, later when I have to just process what happened. And
Right.
It's not pretty. And so, but it also motivates me more to fight to reduce stigma, and that's why I'm so candid about, the good, the bad, and the goofy, because it's real. But I do believe that we can eradicate stigma having conversations like this
Yeah,
and just really being open and honest with people.
absolutely. You mentioned being a veteran. We hadn't even touched on that. That's a whole other conversation that we could have around your service. And thank you so much for your service as a veteran. But it's also interesting to me when we talk about trauma. You reflect on the trauma really pre your military experience, correct?
Yeah, it was pre-military. A lot of it was pre-military. I did experience some trauma, um, when I was in the military. And look, I guess I kind of just slid it like, oh, some trauma. Somebody asked me last week, they said, what's the most traumatic thing that has happened to you? And, Vic, I couldn't do one thing.
Hmm.
It was several. It's that complex trauma. The hits just kept coming. And it's a miracle my brain is not as challenged as it already is, not just from the trauma, but from the drugs, because the drugs were intense and they were heavy, and just the behavior that I did as well. And so the military was one of the things that just really helped save my life. And I love being a soldier. I would go back today if I needed to. And I love my country. Look, and in spite of everything that we have going on in our community, in our country, this is still, I'll still defend it because this is where my family and friends are. And I
Hmm.
still believe the idea that people can live the best version of their lives while they're here on earth. And so the military taught me structure. I love teamwork. My dad was not happy that I went in because I think that he thought that my daughter, she gonna get court-martialed because she don't know how
Hmm.
to shut her mouth. But again, it's some of the best days of my life,
Yeah.
and and still to this day, I work with veterans, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, and we are all grateful that you work in that space as well. In the few minutes we have left, what advice would you give to someone who feels like because of the trauma they've experienced, they feel like I'm broken, I have nothing to offer, my life is over. What advice would you give to that person?
What I would give to that person is that, first of all, healing is your birthright. It is. It is part of the DNA that's inside of them. And to tap into that is, my greatest joy is to encourage people that they do have a purpose here on this earth. Because so many times people think that they don't. And they really, really do. Going back to, from a faith perspective, nobody is on this planet by accident. And so that's why I'm just so vulnerable and authentic about my struggle, because I want people to know, no matter what you've gone through, no matter how bad you think it is, we want to validate that. We want to let you know that we hear you, but we also want to let you know that there's hope. And hope is just not a hashtag that we throw out there. Hope is a reality. Hope is something that's obtainable. But you gotta hope in yourself first. Going back to the faith piece, David, who was, God say was his favorite, but David wasn't no joke. David was a murderer. David did some stuff. And one time David had to tell himself, why are you so cast down? Put your hope in God. And so I just want to tell people, to find out, where your hope lies, and
Hmm.
put your hope in that, put your faith in that, and know that you are not a mistake, that you have purpose here on this earth, and that healing is your birthright, and you deserve that, and you are worth that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let people know that they're worth it, Vic. We gotta let people know that.
We gotta let people know. Tonja, thank you so much for that, and thank you for being my guest today. Every time I talk to you, my heart is so full afterward, and it just really encourages me to want to continue to do this work when I know that I'm doing it alongside people like you. So thank you so much.
Oh no, I've been
stalking.
Yeah, I stalked you for years, so I'm just excited that we get to do this work together, brother. Because
Absolutely.
It's an honor to serve alongside of you, for real.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you to all of our audience for joining us today. Thank you. Behavioral health interventions have historically lacked cultural competence, including outpatient therapy, crisis services, and everything in between. They've lacked equity. Even when I hear the terminology applying the lens of equity, I would submit to you that is insufficient. See, your lens is marked and distorted by your perception of equity and collaboration and reasonable expectations. So I challenge us not to be satisfied with applying the lens of equity, but the voice of equity. Apply the voice of equity not only as it pertains to race and culture and ethnicity, but the intersectionality of race, culture, and ethnicity, and sexual orientation, and gender identity, and socioeconomic status, and physical disability, in addition to living with mental health challenges. Interventions and responses should be person-centered. If you do not understand or acknowledge the impact of cultural beliefs, including stigma and relationships with law enforcement, or the impact of structural racism on the life and perception of the communities that we attempt to serve, that intervention may in fact do more harm than good. It may even become another traumatic event that community has to carry. And if any of us believe that we can build an infrastructure first and address equity later, that is not only folly, it is intentional and willful blindness. Equity will only exist when at every step we acknowledge who has been disproportionately impacted, whether by lack of access or negative outcome, and we involve those impacted communities as partners in building our processes, in crafting the message, and as trusted messengers. And that is Strong Talk.
What's the word? What's the word? Word, strong talk, strong talk. What's the word? What's the word? What's the word? Yeah. What's the word? Strong talk, strong talk.